Everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to look at question 2 from the Cambridge IGCSE Business Studies 0774/01 question paper. This question is based on a business scenario about Oscar who plans to start a children's nursery for children aged 1 to 3 years. Question 2 covers different areas of business studies including pricing, cash flow, advertising and source of finance. So let's go through this question step by step and understand how to answer each part correctly. So let us start with the first part of question 2. The first question asks us to define dynamic pricing. These questions you can see that it is not from just one topic. It combines different areas of business studies. The Liefeld question is from advertising and promotion. Dynamic pricing is from pricing, and other questions are from finance such as cash flow and source of finance. So let's look at each question by one. The first question is define dynamic pricing. So dynamic pricing is a pricing strategy where the price of a product or service changes according to changes in demand or market conditions. In simple words, the price is not always fixed. Okay, price is not always fixed. Not always fixed. It can go up or down depending on demand. For example, if the demand for a hotel room is very high during a holiday season, okay, the hotel may increase its price. When demand is low, the hotel may reduce the price. So remember, dynamic pricing means changing prices according to changes in demand or market conditions. Okay. So now let's move on to the next question. The question asks us to calculate the values of x and y. If you look at the table, you can see that x represent net cash flow and y represent cash outflow. So first we need to find the net cash flow for October. To calculate the net cash flow, we use this equation. The equation is net cash flow equal to cash inflow minus cash outflow. So let us substitute the values from the table. Here we have cash inflow is 1200 and cash outflow is 1500, and the cash inflow minus cash outflow, so 1200 minus 1500 is 300. Therefore the result is negative, so it is shown as in the bracket. The bracket indicates that this is a negative cash flow or net cash outflow. So the business has a net cash outflow $300 in October. Now let's move on to November. Here we need to calculate cash outflow, which is represented by Y. This time we already have the cash inflow and net cash flow, so we can use the formula to find the missing cash outflow. So the formula is cash outflow is equal to cash inflow minus net cash flow. So 2000 minus 500 equal to 1500. Here you can see cash inflow 2000 and net cash flow 500. So the answer is 1500 as cash outflow. So then move on to the next question. Let us look at this question. This question asks us to identify one cash one cash inflow and one cash outflow that business might have. First, what do we mean by cash inflow? Cash inflow is money coming into the business. For example, money received from customers when they buy the product or service. Now, what is cash outflow? Cash outflow is money going out of the business. For example, paying wages to employees or paying rent. So, for this question, we only need to identify one example of each. Cash inflow is money coming into the business. For example, money received from customers or sales revenue. A cash outflow is money going out of the business. For example, paying wages to employees or paying rent. Cash outflow, payment of wages or rent or electricity bills. So here you can write cash inflow is money received from customers, sales revenue. Then cash outflow you can write here paying wages to employees or paying rent or electricity bill. Okay. Then move on to the next question. This is a 6-mark question. You can see here 6 mark. So we need to explain our points properly. The question asks us to explain one advantage and one disadvantage of Oscar using leaflet to advertise his business. First, let us look at the advantage. One advantage is that leaflets are relatively cheap to produce. Okay. Why this is an advantage for Oscar? Because Oscar is starting a new business. So he may have limited money for advertising. If he uses leaflets, he can advertise his nursery at a low cost. This means he can save money and use it for other business expenses. Okay. Here you can read these. Then now let us look at the disadvantages. One disadvantage is that people may not read the leaflets. They may simply throw them away. This means Oscar's advertisements may not reach many parents. As a result, fewer parents may know about his nursery, which could lead to fewer customers. So remember, for a 6-mark explain question, don't just give the advantage and disadvantages. Explain why they are advantages or disadvantages and link your answer to the business. So here you can see the advantage. Leaflets are relatively cheap and you can explain like this. And the disadvantages is some people may not read the leaflets or may simply throw it away. So these explanations are given here, so you can read carefully. Then move on to the next question. This is an 8-mark question. So we need to develop our answer properly. This question asks us to explain 2 factors of Oscar should consider when choosing a suitable source of finance for his business. So we need to give 2 factors for each factors. For each factor, we should explain what it means and then explain how it would affect Oscar's business. Let us look at the first factor. The first factor is the amount of finance needed. Oscar should consider how much money he needs to start his nursery. He will need money for things such as rent, equipment, and other startup costs. If he needs a large amount of finance, he should choose a source of finance that can provide enough money. Otherwise, he may not be able to pay all his startup costs and money not be able to start the business successfully. Okay, that is the first factor, amount of finance needed. And then first he should consider how much finance he need to start the nursery. Then the second factor is the cost of finance. Oscar should consider how much it will cost him to obtain the finance. For example, if he take a bank loan, he will have to pay interest. If the interest rate is high, his cost will increase. and his profit will decrease. Therefore, Oscar should choose a source of finance with an affordable cost. Finally, we need to decide which factor is likely to be the most important. This is justification part of the question. Okay. So, the first factor is amount of finance needed. Then the second factor is cost of finance. Here you can see the explanation. You carefully read this and try your better. And the justification is you can write like this. In my opinion, the amount of finance needed is most important factor for Oscar. This is because he is starting a new nursery and he will have several startup costs to pay. If he cannot raise enough money, he may not be able to start the business at all, although the cost of finance is also important. Having enough finance is more important because without sufficient money, Oscar may not be able to start the nursery successfully. So remember the structure for an 8-mark question. Factor 1, explain it and link it to the business. Factor 2, explain it and link it to the business. Then give a clear judgment and justify why you think one factor is more important. Okay. So here you can see the answers and justification. Factor 2, factor 1. Here you can see the question clearly. So you should read the question carefully and answer one by one. So that's all for today's video. I hope this discussion was helpful to you. If you have any doubts, comment below. And if you're looking for tuition classes for IGCSE, business studies or commerce, you can contact me. I will be happy to help you. Thank you for watching and I will see you in tomorrow. Okay.